Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm Ian Carlos Crawford.
And I'm Ashley K. Smalls.
Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Ian.
We made it to the finale. You know, Ashley, I really appreciate you doing this with me because I know that it can be a lot of work doing this every fucking week.
Well, you know, if you're going to spend your time watching absolutely everything down to the second that MCU does, you might as well make yourself useful. Um, you might as well make yourself useful.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you, and we're finally here at the finale.
We are here, and we are joined by writer and news editor
Arezou. Hello.
Sorry, I should have said writer and news editor at Collider.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Once again, I almost started talking to myself. I had to unmute.
And we are also joined by film critic who is recapping Miss Marvel for Vulture,
Siddhant Adlakha.
Hello. Thank you both for joining me. I want to say a thank you to Arezou, especially for jumping in so late. I emailed her 7 hours ago and she said yes. So I really appreciate that. But I'm happy to have you both here. What I do at the top is, and I guess it's the finale. So Arezou, you go first. What did you think of the finale?
I loved it. I didn't have like super high expectations because I've been burned by that in the past. Yeah. But I did have sort of things I wanted to happen in the finale, and every single thing happened. So
nice.
I was very pleased with the finale overall.
Cool. Siddhant, what did you think of the finale?
I feel similarly. I was a bit nervous going in just because I tend to know how these things go on Marvel and Disney Plus shows, but I was pretty satisfied with it. I found it, fun and intimate, and it didn't, devolve into pew-pew laser battles.
Yeah.
Not too much anyway.
Yeah. Ashley, what did you think?
I think we're basically all on the same page there. I know last episode, matter of fact, when we were like talking about what do you guys think, how this is going to come together, I was really, nervous about it all. I've been nervous about since the first episode because of the 6-episode structure, and like not all the past MCU shows have done a good job of sticking the landing. And so here we are, where this is unanimously, I would have to say, my favorite episode of the season. And then, I mean, I'm very biased when we get to that part and we get to talk about some things. But like, yeah, they did all the things I wanted them to do. And I truly did not expect them to be able to, but they did.
Yeah, Siddhant, as you said, I feel like, and Ashley and I, we've been going through these Marvel shows together. Like a lot of it, we do get burnt at the end there, right? Sometimes, like, and I like Ashley and I think, and Arezou, I think we all kind of talked about how there was a lot, and we were a little bit like, ooh, how are they gonna, or are we gonna do what we've done in the other shows where we don't like land the plane for the ending? And I thought they did a really good job. Especially like the way it ended last week, I was a little worried with the explosion. I was like, wait, that felt very abrupt, but it worked. And I think overall this had one of the best endings. Like, I know it's unpopular, but Ashley and I agree. I think Hawkeye did a really good job of was a first series that actually had like a full ending, not like a who knows what's coming next. We're leaving it completely open-ended. And this also had, even though there's a lot of like who knows what's happening next, even though we kind of get the gist. I thought this like closed the story that we were telling here, and I was like very satisfied. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so before we get into the episode, I do want to say, so I had work yesterday morning at 9 a.m., literally opening Twitter before leaving for work. I had to schedule a few tweets, and it already was spoiled. Like, I feel like we have this discussion for every Marvel show, but it's like, everyone's like, don't spoil anything. And everyone's like, yeah, I hate when people spoil. And then there are like 85 spoiler tweets. But it was spoiled for me in a weird way where and I told everyone this before recording, the way everyone is talking about the use of the word mutant, I thought it was like Patrick Stewart is making a cameo in his yellow hover chair and like telling her to come to upstate New York with him because she's got to be part of the X-Men. That's really what I thought. And I was kind of like, that's too much. Like, that's too much for this series. Like, they can't just like put the X-Men in it. But then the way it is, I was like, oh, all right. Yeah, sure. Like that makes more sense. Did any of it get spoiled for any of you?
No, I this was the first episode I stayed up till 3 a.m. for.
Okay.
Yeah,
I did that.
I was on a flight when the episode dropped, so I paid the $20 for the streaming Wi-Fi and I watched it right away.
That's smart.
I had to wake up early to review it, so I didn't really have the time to look at spoilers early in the morning.
Fair. Yeah. That was what I was actually going to ask you, if if Vulture was able to get, because Marvel just doesn't send screeners, right? Even if you're recapping.
Yeah, after the first 2 episodes, they tend not to do that. It's horribly inconvenient.
Yeah, I
That's
remember.
why I paid for the streaming Wi-Fi, because I had to turn in a recap. I didn't have time to wait for the plane to land.
That's impressive. You did it. Yeah. She can do it all. She can travel while and work at the same time. Yeah, I was just weirdly, the thing that wasn't spoiled for me though was the end credits scene with Carol Danvers. I was surprised that when that happened, I was like, oh, because I think we even discussed that, Ashley, how we
I
thought
mean, to
she
be
might.
honest with you, yeah, and that's another thing. I was just like, I just did not even see it happen. Well, I did, but I didn't. On one hand, I was like, all right, it's going to be really weird if they have her in the Marvels and don't have some sort of connection with her at all until the Marvels movie. But then at the same time, at this point, we've been so straight away from any conversation around the Kree and Skrulls that I was like, well, if they're avoiding it at all costs, I don't know here. But yeah, no, I mean, I think on some hands it was a less surprising cameo because it's like that is such a big, I shouldn't say a big part of her story, but it is where we know this is leading up to. So I guess I think the X-Men conversation took over because, I mean, to be fair to Ms. Danvers, we have been waiting for the mutants a little longer than her. And then two, it was the one part where we just didn't see it coming. We none of us, if someone had said they're going to bring in the mutants via Miss Marvel, I would have been like, that don't make no goddamn sense. Shut up.
Yeah, I mean, same, right? Yeah. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about that part when we get there, I guess. I thought, and Siddhant, you said this, that it did have some of the pew pew, but not too much. And that is what I really liked about it. It was able to balance the Marvel-y superhero fight action stuff with the actual characters and plot that we had really appreciated with this show that it had been doing. Because, hands up, I love WandaVision, but that finale kind of became that. With characters randomly missing because of COVID. So I was like, I like that we kind of start with Bruno and Cameron, they're on the run. We're right in there. There's no slow setup and damage control is hunting them. Yeah, Ashley, what'd you feel about the way they threw us right in?
I was grateful for it. The episodes haven't been that long. They're 40 minutes. So it's I really enjoyed it. They did that in the beginning, and then also feeling as you were saying about they had a good balance of some pew pew, but at the same time at the end we get that those family moments, even in between it, getting Kamala's mother who hands her over her costume is she gets these moments with each parent, even her brother at some point where it's really well rounded. I think a big part of that was them getting a bit more of the action out of the way from the jump, so that so that when we do get to some more of the conversations and the heartwarming moments, they're not getting overshadowed with, oh shit, you gotta run. So I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed that. There's little nuts and bolts about it too, because the tech that they used that was blowing rooms apart was reminiscent at least of what they used in Incredible Hulk. Which I mean, that's pretty dramatic for a kid. I don't know what you're doing all of that for. And then we kind of theorized, or was it just, no, I think it might have been all of us on some level that Cameron might go, I don't want to say evil because it was a very understandable bit of anger.
Yeah.
But we figured both from the comics, because in the comics he is kind of has some villainous ways, that there may be this when he finds out his mother has passed away, he's not going to be all understanding of, well, she did abandon me, so I guess, this makes sense. But, he's going to be pretty angry about it. And so we got to see that as well. And this is going to be petty, but I was kind of mad she was going to kiss Cameron and not the guy she left in Pakistan because he was cuter.
But in the end, she doesn't kiss any of them.
That's good. Exactly, Miss. Exactly. All right, Benzie. You have options
Keeping her
out here.
options
What are you
open.
picking for?
That's what season 2 needs to be about. Who's she gonna kiss first?
I actually appreciate that in shows like this. Like, I mean, Slayerfest started out as a Buffy podcast, right? And like, so unfortunately, Ashley has to hear about Buffy all the time and has never watched Buffy.
That's the only character I know on the show.
But like, I always felt like it's fun, the like romance aspect, but for me, that's not the point, right? And I was glad that this show kind of did the same thing, where it's like, ooh, she almost kisses him, but like, that's also not the point of this. Like, she's a teen, so of course it's like, ooh, that boy's cute. Ooh, that boy's cute. But like, in the end, the show was about her and her family, and like, you know what I mean? Like you said, we could do that in season 2, but like, this is like setting up like her family, her friends, and I appreciate the story didn't harp too much on like, which cute boy will she kiss? It was just kind of like, no, we're gonna keep moving. I also was worried. And I said this all season. I kept worrying about Bruno. I was like, is he gonna turn into an incel dude? But he didn't, and I was glad.
He's too sweet for that.
He is. But you know, like, we got a couple scenes where he like looks scowlingly at her and Cameron, and I was like, oh no. But yeah, in the end, you're right. He was too sweet. I just get worried, you know. I was like,
100%. It's a very valid concern, but his thing seemed to be more, as long as she's happy, I'll just sit here and nurse my broken heart.
Which makes me like him even more, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I appreciate that character, because it's like, yes, your feelings can be hurt as long as you're not an asshole about it. But okay, so we get them chasing, we get Kamala back, her and her family, and I loved the bit of her, like, quote unquote, coming out. Arezou, what'd you think of that scene?
Okay, so yes, the whole scene with the sort of, I have an announcement to make, and it's very dramatic, and then it's like, oh yeah, we all knew. Yeah, because your dad leaves his phone on speaker, and I think everybody sort of knows that experience. You know that gossip in the family doesn't stay secret for long. And it just felt very true that she didn't have to tell everybody, because this was just too big a deal. So for that reason, I'm like, yes, that is exactly, like, I'm not Pakistani, I'm Middle Eastern, but I'm like, that is exactly how Middle Eastern families work. There's no such thing as a secret.
I was in splits about it, because again, you know, being from an Indian family, like it's exactly how information travels.
Yeah.
It's funny because I even wrote in my notes, I was like, I always thought that was a Puerto Rican family thing. I'm glad to know it's not just. But I thought, and also like the detail of like, he always talks with speaker. Like, that's how my parents talk on the phone too. Everything's always speaker or a video chat where like they're only half in frame. But I've
gotten into the habit now. I like, if I'm at my desk, I'll leave my phone on speaker. I'm like, what? It is easier. He's right.
And it even reminded me, so like, you know, whatever, but like when I came out, I was very close to my grandma, and I came out to my parents, and my mom was like, you should go tell your grandmother. And I remember driving to her house. I'm at the front door, and I'm like, Grandma, I got to tell you something. She went, I know your mother told me you're gay. Do you want to eat the empanadas I made or not? And like, that was that. And I was like, oh, well, why did she send me over to tell? Like, what?
Because there were empanadas.
Yeah, right. So I thought about like a lot of that, like her being like, yeah, your mom told me, even though my mom was still pretending that she hadn't, which I guess is like a mom thing, right? But yeah, I'm always like, I feel like by the end, I really appreciated both her parents and how different they are in their approach with her. Like, right, the dad is just very like sweet boy, right? He loves her. He's the one that cried when like she rejected the costumes, like, and he was still like so sweet and tender with her when he's like, you know, I'm so proud of you. And I don't know, I really like that. I like that we still, even in the finale, when we're building up to a big fight, we still have these moments with the family, right? But yeah, so we get, I thought it was cute that they're all asking her, and, you know, she even tells, what's the quote? I meant to write it down, that she says to her dad, like, you didn't raise me to something about
stand
like,
by when I could help somebody.
Right. Yeah. And I thought that was a good quote. And I think we had talked about this last episode too, but like it does feel very Spider-Man, right? And that even felt very Spider-Man to me, like the Uncle Ben, like, with great power comes responsibility. And like, she's like, Dad, you didn't teach me to stand by. And I thought that was like a nice, I don't know. Yeah. And so then, Ashley, where do we go after that?
She heads home. She thinks she's about to get the happy moment. We're just going home to rest. But Bruno and Cameron are on the run.
Right.
What
Nakia
you call it?
FaceTimes.
Nakia calls her brother, and she's like, "What the hell's going on if she's calling your phone?"
Right.
And basically, Nakia's like, "Have you seen Bruno? Because something's going down." And that is when something shit goes down.
And I don't know if I mentioned this, Ashley, but I kept thinking her mom probably makes the costume. And then I was very happy that we did. Like, she gets that call, she goes upstairs, and her mom's like, "You're not going out like that." And it's because her mom made her outfit. I thought
Yeah,
that
there
was
was
like,
I think I was watching some theory videos. Well, not theory, but like breakdown videos where
mhm.
like she uses the same box that the bracelet came in, or like that
Oh,
some other
really?
stuff came in and stuff, things like that.
It's
I
the
mean,
toffee box that the grandma saved for her.
okay, there we go, there we
Oh,
go. And yeah, it was also a full circle moment from her making the Hulk costume in the first episode to now
Mhm.
making her official costume for her actually becoming a hero. Um and I think even the mask, because I just realized up until now she was using the mask that she used in her Captain Marvel costume,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
now she's using her official Miss Marvel mask. And I hadn't even picked up on that. But yeah, so she gets her official costume, and then oh yeah, what you call it? The cops. I don't even like calling them damage control. Y'all are just police officers with bigger guns. Um, who went chasing after. I love how they're called damage control, but you literally just fucking destroyed
Yeah.
half the train.
Like, they're not like, they're just creating
Like,
damage.
New Yorkers,
well, how
we
much
don't
damage
have
they
many
caused.
requests.
Yeah.
Just leave the train alone. We need to get to work. Like, please, please, like, you can do anything else you want. We don't care. We literally are like the main people. We mind our business. There can be a full blown threat in the middle of the street. We don't give a shit. We got to get to places. Just don't fuck up the train. That is how you get New Yorkers to get violent. Um, but yeah, they're doing all of this, and Cameron,
His powers,
he
yeah.
can't control his powers. He can't do anything really. And you can see that it's like, well, this is fast forwarding a bit, so I'll wait till we get to that. But yeah, but yeah,
Right. So then,
that's where we're at right now, is that they're being chased by so-called damage control, who's doing more damage.
right. And then they hide out at the mosque.
Yes.
And I can't remember her name. I just always put her in my notes as Orange is the New Black Warden, because
Yeah,
that's
I do too.
yeah.
Clearly, she loves these kind of roles, because I'm like,
Sh-
man, I'm about sick of you.
she's good at them, but
She's
like,
good.
yeah, I loved this scene when they were like, this is not our first rodeo, when they all like already had their IDs out. And when she's like, this is for your protection, and they're like, mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Yeah, Siddhant, what did you think of that scene?
I thought it was really funny when Sheikh Abdullah starts quoting Lincoln and Agent
Yes.
Weaver assumes it's a quote from the Quran. There's a series of things that happen there that sort of subtly trying to say, like, no, this is where we belong here too,
Yeah.
as Muslim Americans. This is our home too. Even though nobody comes out and gives a speech that is, that comes out and says it in so many words, because before you transition to that scene, you have a fleeting shot of the Statue of Liberty as well. So the
Mhm.
episode is trying to, tell you all these things without hitting you over the head with it.
Yeah, and so what do we? I kind of liked. I not liked, but like I think of even what was it? Ashley, was it the first or second episode when she's
I was
when
literally
Eve?
just thinking about
Right.
this, about we had a conversation. I think it might have been the second episode, and maybe a little bit of the first, where we were talking about how a better depiction of racism, and for that matter even like Islamophobia in TV shows isn't the more like, I don't want to say outrageous, because like those are things that can happen, but the day-to-day way in which many people of color deal with racism is usually in the form of microaggressions. So like, the entire mosque having their IDs out, that's because they've had to deal with this bullshit before.
Yeah.
It's something they have to deal with on a regular basis. So they're 100% prepared for every microaggression and all the little bits and pieces of racism baked into these lines, where we're really here for your protection. Like,
Right.
I'm not even going to get disrespectful. I'm going to just keep it. I'm going to keep it. I'm gonna do my best here. I'm gonna do my best. But like that is the reality of like when we talk about the fact that we deal with this every day. No, for me, it's not getting pulled over by the cops. It's often someone saying something offhanded to me and me having to smile through it and correct them in the most PC way without me losing my job and getting sent to jail. So, it's like that is the reality of it. And like even the scene or, them thinking that an Abraham Lincoln quote must be something religious when really it's like y'all will say things like, speak English, be American, and then the most American thing gets said to you and you don't even know it because
Right.
you don't know your own goddamn history, but you're white, so you get away with it.
I was curious what everyone, because I thought that her form of racism felt real, right?
Mm-hmm. There was a moment like the first time she goes to the mosque after she's done interrogating the sheikh and Nakia, he kind of dismisses her with the next time you come in, take off your shoes. Because it's not just like a respect thing. It's like she's walking on the carpet that people put their foreheads on.
Yeah.
So like obviously take off your shoes. And I feel like maybe I'm just imagining this because I was paying attention, but I feel like there was a shot of her still wearing her boots.
Yeah, there was.
And walking across the carpet. And it's just like little moments of this blatant disregard for the things she's been asked, while at the same time pretending she's there to help them. So with Ashley, it was just a further thing I noticed.
Because like that is more. I feel like that's like, rather than making it like cartoony caricature of racist white lady, it's like this feels, because she would definitely be like, no, I'm not, like, right, this is the type of woman who would be like, no, I'm very open and welcoming and blah blah blah. And I feel like that feels more real than just being like cartoony, like it's like the type of person who would say they're not, and like maybe even like she'd be like, well, I vote Democrat, I voted for Obama or whatever, like bullshit, like the people in fucking Get Out. So yeah, I liked that, and she was very good at being a character you hate, right? And yeah, I also like the way the series had been setting this up. I mean, the entire show had been showing you that this is a community, right? And I really liked seeing them like go to bat for Bruno and Cameron. And Cameron is a guy that, arguably none of them really know that well. He's like new in town. We hadn't really, I don't think we had seen him at Mosque, had we?
No,
right? Yeah. And so like I appreciated that it was like showing like, no, they're still going to help these kids just because, of course they are. And they know that damage control is probably shady. They've already dealt with this woman. So yeah, and it was very cute when he's like, you need disguises, and puts on the little hats on both of them.
And those are real hats. You can buy them.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the haram and halal hats.
I love that. Then I love that was a disguise.
Yeah.
So the boys sneak out the back, and then we do get Kamala and them meeting, right? Which I was like, oh god, I don't want that to go on all episode where she's looking for them. I was glad that it was like, cool, she's there, she met them. And so she calls, I put him in as Red Dagger boyfriend. She calls her Red Dagger boyfriend for help. And again, I even liked that at first he was like, Cameron's the one who's kind of like, but like, I like that we're showing community, even like, this guy's in Pakistan and he's like, okay, fine, get him to the port and I will help. And yeah, I don't know. It was like, that was a character, especially the Red Dagger stuff. I was kind of like, that felt like something we could wait till season 2 for. And like, I still kind of feel that way, but I liked that like her meeting him did tie into the finale, right? Like it did help. Cause I love like everything comes together. And then, Arezou, where do they sneak into?
they sneak into the high school, meet up with Nakia, and come up with a very Home Alone-esque plan, which I really appreciated. I knew we were going to get a big fight. It's a Marvel finale. There's going to be a fight, but it was less pew-pew and more like homemade booby trap, which I really, really appreciated. I
am so glad you referenced it. I kept putting, I love this Home Alone shit. Like, I really did. That's like all my notes say. So, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was both really funny and really intense at the same time. It's probably one of my like favorite Marvel climaxes till date, just because it's not about the spectacle; it's about friendship, and it's innovative. It's kids being mischievous and cheeky and smart, And it sort of hammers home the fact that at the end of the day, yeah, this is a sort of young adult show, a high school aged show, aimed at younger audiences.
Yeah, and I like that, even though it's so abrupt, I love that the brother is just like, well, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, your mom sent me.
Yeah, and Zoe too. Shout out
Yeah.
to Zoe.
And I like that every time it happened, the characters are like, wait, what are you doing here? Like the characters are like, this is abrupt, but they're just like, yeah, this is, we're gonna blow past it and keep going. I thought that was like, I was very charmed by both of them just like popping up to help. And also, yeah, when the brother pops up and Kamala's like, superheroes don't need chaperones. Like, I was like very charmed by that. Also, I thought the brother was like a good character. And I liked him just being there to help.
And he feels so betrayed when he finds out that Kamran, one, isn't his cousin, and two, doesn't like the British Bake Off.
I like that. That was like, those were the two things. Like British Bake Off was high up on the things he was betrayed about. Yeah,
I also like that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
I just like that. The whole scene with her parents, where her mom like is looking at her and looking at her dad and being like, "We trust her, right?" And then the second she's out of the house, she sends her brother, just, "Go keep an eye on her. Like we trust her, but not that much."
I mean that tracks, right?
Yeah, she said one thing and completely did another.
So then we get that even like whoever this woman's boss is from Damage Control is like, do not engage. This is a high school, like,
because this shit don't make sense. Like,
yeah,
it just like I'm just, and like this is, I know people are. Let me gather my thoughts here. I'm just like, because it's just don't like. First of all, look, you got to do a whole lot for me to ever go snitch into anybody who looks like a position of authority. I don't know shit, but to begin with, if it's like you just as you don't got to be a fucking Tony Stark genius to think of optics. You're a grown ass woman. This is a child.
You're not wrong.
Like, this is a universe where they're pretty used to, at this point, somebody popping up being able to do something that no one's supposed to be able to do. Right. So like that in itself is not going to scare them, nor is it at this point, they're just going to be, but especially when it is a child, you got all of the SWAT, not even the SWAT team, like one level up of the SWAT team cornered around a high school, and you thought people were going to, like, how did you think this was going to fucking look? Like, unless you have that, Men in Black device someplace to just wipe everybody's fucking memory. Like, even if y'all have succeeded here, everyone in Jersey City is going to be walking around like, them white people came and they took a little brown girl. She wasn't doing nothing but making sparkles. This is fucked up. Somebody go find her. That would be me. I would be on social media losing my shit. Like, I would be like, no, they ran up in the mosque and they started harassing people. Absolutely not. I would be losing my shit. So, but like, this is also brings me to the whole, this is why I'm like, these people got to be Skrull. At the very least, Miss Mommins, who was the main one in the middle of it, got to be a Skrull. Because I'm like, this does not make common sense here anymore in terms of y'all have moved way past trying to control damage. You are the damage. And then two, it's like your desire to make an entire public spectacle in front of the people who you quote unquote are supposed to be protecting, regardless of what they may think, makes me feel like you have some sort of vendetta here. Like, as far as what we know Kamala and even Cameron are capable of so much bigger shit. But like from what the public eye have seen, they making sparkles and they saved a few lives. And well, Kamala's, she saved a few people. So it's like, if I see this device that can blow up a hallway, like that thing that they had that blew up a fucking stereo, I'm going to be way more scared of you than them. So, that's why I'm just like, this shit this is moves past making any sort of sense here. So I am side-eyeing the fuck of anybody associated with this organization, but especially the main woman. Because like, why are you going this hard for a kid? Yeah.
I mean, yes, I agree. Ashley, I love when you get riled up, Ashley.
Like, why are you doing all of this? Like, why have you got this I bet you your ass won't be nowhere near She-Hulk. I bet you got all this stuff for Kamala. I guarantee you when Bruce Banner decides to lose his mind because he stepped on a fucking Lego block, y'all are going to stay your asses home.
I love that, Ashley. And I liked how like in like creative they were with their traps too. To get back to that, like I like that they use, what was it, like one of the like ball machines that like shoots out tennis balls, but did they put softballs in it? I think they did,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when they get into the lab, I mean, I didn't know what the hell that was, but I was like, sure, science. When it's like the skeleton stabs a thing and then all that like poof comes out. I like that.
Yeah. And I like that the first thing they do isn't even a trap so much as it is a distraction,
Yes.
where the disco ball comes down and you get this Pakistani pop song "Coco Karina" playing, which plays in the first episode as well. So that was a nice little throwback. But then you also have this like really stark and like disturbing image of like SWAT lasers bouncing off a disco ball in a high school. So there was,
Yeah.
for a moment, I was like, this is wildly uncomfortable, but I was still having a good time.
Yeah, yeah. um, yeah, and I kind of like I felt like it was definitely an on purpose parallel, right? Like these guys have these big giant fucking guns, and like
Mhm.
these are kids and like one adult, and they're like in a very non-violent way fighting back. Yeah, and I thought that was like because Kamala, she does a lot of like saving and deflecting, right? Like she's not violent. She's just not.
Mhm.
She like when so like everyone I actually was like, oh, when like Bruno first gets hit in the face with the gun, I was like, Jesus. And like when they show Amir and Nakia and I think Zoe all like hitting the ground because they're
Ooh.
arrested, I was like, ooh, like I actually felt like I was like, oh no. I mean, even though you knew there wasn't whatever, but I still was like, ooh, this is like brutal for these characters that we, have seen for 6 episodes that we really liked and haven't really like been in any violent situations.
Yeah, it goes from being fun to visceral really quick.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Um, and so then we get the scene where Cameron is like, I gotta get to my mom. I wanted to know what we all felt because I did understand why Bruno was like, we cannot tell him right now. But also I felt like, but then it led to this moment, right? So I was like, ugh, I don't know. But yeah, what'd you all think?
He was using common sense. I
Yeah,
mean, as someone, you lose someone really close to you, not just close, but the closest person you have to
right.
you, also your primary caregiver in terms of like going through the world is lost. I need the person who's, literally their entire purpose is supposed to be to protect me. And
Mhm.
you find out, yeah, that's not happening because they're gone. It's a lot of emotions to deal with in general, but especially when you got people chasing you,
Right.
and particularly, not bring in the racist aspect. It's like between the fact that this is probably someone on some level who's felt targeted even before the powers. Now
Mhm.
you got somebody. Now you got them coming after me because I do. I could. I would just say that the fuck it attitude is very much understandable. Not right, but
Mhm.
I get exactly where he's coming from, and that would be why I completely understand where Bruno was like, don't tell him shit. Let him lose his mind when we have him, when we're safe and when we have him off someplace. So Bruno was using common sense, but also I mean, it doesn't, it. I think when you realize something is wrong, you allow yourself to be in denial for just a little bit. But when you got 20 people chasing after you and your mother hasn't popped up yet, you start to understand like
Yeah.
the only way she's not here is because she can't be here. So yeah, but I understand where Bruno was coming from. I understand Cameron's reaction when
Yeah.
finding out what it was. But yeah,
Yeah, I think that was where I was like, I get why, but I also got why I got why Bruno was like, we can't. But I got why Cameron was like, no, you need to tell me right now because I'm realizing it's like you said, Ashley, it's like, wait a minute, my mom isn't here and she isn't coming.
like yeah, I mean, it's
Hmm.
like I'm like we're on the news, like we're number one, like we're the
Yeah.
number one news item right now. There's no way she doesn't know what's happening if she's here. So
Right.
I mean, she could hate me, but she's not about to let a bunch of people come after me like this. This is crazy.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Arezou,
yeah.
what do you think of that?
My thing with Kamran that I thought was really interesting was when he starts to spiral and starts to realize his mom's not there. His whole thing about I have to go home,
Mhm.
like I have to go back to my world. She wouldn't leave me here. But we know Kamran was born here. I say here. like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the
No, I know what
in
you
the
mean.
current world. Like Kamala was born here. He wasn't born in the clandestine dimension.
Mhm.
And I like that they show just how ingrained this stuff that Najma was telling him
Mhm.
is, that he feels he has no place in the only world he's ever known.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sort of like what Ashley was saying about him feeling targeted now because he has these powers, but he's probably been carrying this a long time because Najma's probably been telling him that they are targeted because of who they are, even though he's from here.
Right.
This is
And
his home. So like, I think all of that's just kind of compounding at the same time. And I
yeah,
thought that was
and
like a
that
really interesting angle to take with him.
sorry, and that My Home line, it also has a really interesting parallel to the whole story of partition that's happening with the other characters, because the place that he yearns for, the place that he feels like he belongs, is a place that he has never been to and maybe can never go to because it's on the other side of this, granted in a different sense, a
Right.
border, but at the same time, it's very similar to what a lot of Indians and Pakistanis have experienced. And it's similar with my family, because all four of my grandparents came over from Pakistan to India in 1947, and that's where you know their homes were. That's where I would say, like, my ancestral homes are, but places that I can probably never visit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about the parallels with like the story we had seen and like what he's saying about going home to this different dimension that he just cannot go to. Um yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and like I was glad he didn't go full villain, right? Because you still felt bad for him, and I was glad when Kamala does like stop him, it's not there's not violence, right? It's just she kind of talks to him and she's like, just go. And she gets him out.
Mhm.
And I liked the idea that like, I mean, he did get violent, but it was like you kind of are like, well, he did just find out his mother was murdered, like, or was died in whatever. And like you felt bad for him. And he also like had trouble with his powers, right? So yeah, I liked we didn't have to go full villain. Um, and damage control as a villain worked because I mean we got like the racist white lady at the head of it, but we also it's like we didn't need like a full big bad villain that's like versus her and has her powers. Like I felt like we didn't need that in this series, right?
I completely agree. I think the clandestines, I think they were kind of building up to be that big villain.
Yes.
And then you realize that no, the real problem was this
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
agency. And they were the real villain all along.
Yeah, and it is a little weird because the clandestines could have been like a full season like story arc or like villains. But it did work, I think, in the end. I was a little like, I don't know where we're going with this, but I do think it worked with having there be no like equal, like hard to fight big bad. Yeah. So what do you think of that?
I think the clandestines as a whole tend to present like a lot of problems by virtue of the fact that they are so underwritten and undetailed, because you
Mhm.
need them to drive the plot even after they're dead.
Yeah.
Um, but I was reading an interview that the showrunner Bisha Ali did. I believe it was with Variety, talking about how much ended up being left on the cutting room floor, or how much they weren't able to shoot when
Mhm.
it came to the Noor dimension and the history of the clandestines and all that. And you have certain like production constraints, you have
Right.
certain time constraints. So I think the intent was certainly there to you know flesh them out more, to do more with them, but unfortunately that's not what ended up happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I've a thing I don't love is a lot of these Marvel shows when they're like, we were going to do this, and it's like, but that would have been so much better. Like I don't love that all the
Yeah.
time. Just right, I feel like after Multiverse of Madness, like all those interviews, I was like, stop telling me you didn't watch WandaVision. I'm getting
Yeah.
mad.
Or telling me that she was supposed to, like work up to be the villain because yes,
Right.
that's actually how it should have
How
been.
it should have been, yeah. um, but yeah, and I did. So Siddhant, you mentioned at the top, you mentioned that you were worried about the fight, but when we did eventually get the fight scene, what did you think about it?
It's not something that takes precedence over the characters and the story. It's something that feels like, whether or not it's over the top, it feels like it's an organic extension of what's going on, because you have these two characters with powers, one who is sort of losing control, one who is trying to protect people, including the other character, and all of this is happening in the vicinity of cops and the Department of Damage Control SWAT team, who are being hostile to a community that is trying to help these kids. And I think so all those pieces work together, and it also definitely helps that the powers in question are really pretty to look at,
Yeah.
which is not usually the case. But I think the scene, it works for the most part. It's not something that blew me away or anything, but it's like, all right, all the pieces, they fit together here.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Because sometimes with the Marvel stuff, they can go a little overboard with the like final act. Like that was, I think my only complaint with Shang-Chi was that like at the end, there was like a little too much like CGI dragon energy fights. So I was glad we didn't like lose the plot here. And I also I thought, I don't know, sometimes in shows and movies, when they do like modern social media stuff, it can feel like a weird old parent writing the social media stuff. And it felt like it made sense. Like them being like, Zoe is an influencer, have her go live so everyone sees it.
Yeah. And I'm so happy they did that, because I mean, again, just trying to be a little realistic of like, let's just say we woke up tomorrow and a bunch of people was like, actually, people with powers have been, walking around and helping you out. You didn't even know it. But like, that is like, we are in this time period where when these comics were being written, well, not Miss Marvel's, but some of the others, social media and things like that weren't really a thing. But if you're going to write them in this current universe, in fact, this universe is actually a few years ahead of us, then it has to be a thing. Social media isn't like a hobby. It's like people, I think they just came out with a study that Gen Z uses TikTok more than Google to find a thing. So it's like you have to incorporate that when you're showing a character of this age. And so I think they did an amazing job, because it's like even taking it back to even some other Marvel properties, like when Miles Morales is watching Peter Parker fight in that first fight in Into the Spider-Verse, and he takes his phone out and he clicks it to start recording. Like that is realistic, because if I'm in a situation like that, I'm going to be scared shitless, and I'll probably have my phone out the entire time. So, I do think I really like that they allowed her to incorporate it, but also that it, and again, going back to this whole, are y'all really damage control thing? Because it's like everything can, even if this had been a small scale thing, and it wasn't, but even if they had tried to hide it, we're in this time where something can go viral. So you guys picking on, this social influencer with 1 million followers, and then this little girl, it's like y'all are going to be viral in the morning, even if you had gotten away with this tonight. So I think I'm really happy to see them incorporating that and not ignoring that. Like, if you're going to show superheroes in what's supposed to be a modern universe that reflects the one that we live in, then that means, anybody around Kamala's age, and I would even argue millennials too, should be having their phones out every 20 minutes to hear some or see some stupid shit.
Yeah. Arezou, what do you think of that?
I completely agree. I was really surprised, and I don't know why. I guess maybe like the other stuff are out of touch when, Zoe goes live and everybody like shows up at the barricade, that while they're there, half of them have their phones out.
Yeah.
Because they have no idea what damage control is about to do, but they're like, we are going to document this because whatever they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And I guess they don't really do that in Marvel stuff, and it hadn't occurred to me until I saw them do it here that, this is a great way for them to try to hold people accountable when this is all they're able to do.
And that it does make sense, right? It really does.
Yeah.
And this is I think the first Marvel thing that's really showed us what it's like to just exist in this world as a regular everyday person.
Yeah. And I like that. I think that's like, for me, that's the show. I think you're right. I mean, I don't know that any of them have, I guess maybe Hawkeye a little bit, but it feels like Kate was already kind of like super trained with bow and arrow at the start.
Can I say a thing?
Yeah.
About that Kamala feels like the most, like her story feels like the most what it's like to be an everyday person, because Kate Bishop comes from money.
Yeah.
And Peter Parker is bankrolled by a billionaire. I know that's not where he ends up, and no hate for Tom Holland Spider-Man. I really like those movies, but there's nothing friendly neighborhood about him, because until the end of his third movie, Tony Stark pays for everything.
Right.
So
and Tony
this is
Stark
like,
can afford everything.
and he can afford everything. So this is really the first one that like really shows kind of what you can do with a sewing kit and some paint.
Mhm.
And like when you're in your
yeah.
community and you feel your community and you're like about keeping them safe and doing what's best for them and trying to live a normal life, like it's granted jumping ahead post credit scene, she's still a superhero. She still has to do her science homework. Like that hasn't
Right.
changed. So
It almost reminded me a little bit of, and I don't love those movies as much as a lot of people do. Like, I feel like people are really nostalgic for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I remember when they came out and I saw them in theaters and I was like, happy to have a superhero movie. But that, like, I mean, and we've talked about how she very much is like a modern day Peter Parker. That, like, it reminded me of that scene in both in the first Spider-Man and second Spider-Man had scenes where it's like, oh, the city is there because they want to help him. Like when they're all on the bridge and they're yelling for him, and when they're on the train and they're like, no one give away his identity. That felt very this, right? When it's because I like that it was her parents, but it wasn't just her family, right? It was the community, like the whole community was there. The guy who sold them halal was there. Like I loved seeing. I love anything when like we can get the characters to all come together, and it made sense, and it was like organic, right? That like, yeah, the people that live nearby are going to be the ones that come when Zoe's going live and everyone's seeing it. And it also like made me more emotional because like her parents hadn't really seen a lot of the action, right? And her parents being there, I was immediately like, I don't want anything to happen to her parents. Oh my God, I want them to leave. I want them to be safe.
I was really scared the cops were going to rough them up. Oh, I think there's maybe a shot where, a cop pushes someone and that made me really mad. But much to your point, like, I think the thing that it does have in common with the first two Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies is that it feels like it unfolds in a real place, which is not something you can necessarily say for all the MCU movies, even the ones that take place on Earth. Like if you watch something like the second Tom Holland one, something home. I don't remember what it's called. Far From Home, the one where they go to Europe.
I always forget which title goes with which one, but Far From Home, you're right.
Where they go from city to city, but none of these cities feel like real places with real people and cultures and histories. Even the bits that are actually shot on location, just because the focus is never on the people and the sense of life. And granted, it may or may not be necessary for those stories, but in contrast, the reason you can have something like the halal guy coming in at the end is because this show gets that, you like you form a relationship with the guy behind the counter at a deli or a bodega. You form a relationship with your halal guy. And also you have those early scenes of just the sights and smells and sounds and textures of Jersey City, so it feels real.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like of the side characters, he got a lot of screen time. So it made sense for us to come back to him. And like, yeah, I loved that they were there and the crowd, like every time we cut to the mom, like, and mom and dad upset about or worried, I was like, oh no. Cause I like loved her parents so much. And like, I love them even more. I already really liked them, but like, I felt like I loved them even more when Kamala, like, quote unquote, came out. And it's like, well, mom already told me, well, we heard there's a dad, and the dad's being all proud of her and everything. Like, you get this very accepting scene, and then it's like, ooh, like danger right after. And so, yeah, I love that even one of her aunties was there. Like, I love that. Yeah, it's very nice, and it felt very, I mean, you made a good point earlier. It is very YA, right? It does feel very YA. And I say that not as an insult, because I'm 39 years old and I read a lot of YA. Yeah, it was just, it like did the good job of like having the emotional beats with like mixed with the action. What did we think of Kamala actually saying embiggen?
That was great.
Like, yeah. Ashley, I feel like you've been waiting for that.
Yeah, it was because I really wasn't sure, with her powers being different than what the comics were. I wasn't sure how they were going to, if this was going to be a facet they decided to still incorporate with the new design. So I was really happy that it's possible for her to do it. And, it kind of felt like a very, I can do this all day moment,
Yeah.
like, you know, her catchphrase, like, you know, wait to the last episode to give the comic book fans that. And also, Iman looks absolutely like she makes great superhero faces. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but like she really, she really does. You know, she like, you know, it wasn't like a whoa, I can do this. I don't know. She gives like I'm a comic book fan playing this part, and I've been waiting
Yeah.
myself to get to this. um, so yeah, that was great. And then also I was happy about it because I have it out for this bitch. I just keep bringing her up every time it's my time to talk. But you know, I do. If this was a real life, I can take her as long as them fucking guns aren't there. Like I would dead ass be like, Kamala, like little girl, you go do your thing. She don't got superpowers, so she is. I got my temps. Those are my powers. But like I like that it was very clear they picked on her because she was younger and they assumed her powers wouldn't be enough to take on these, you know, things. And then she could. And you could kind of see the change in the not Miss Bitch, but like the other her backup. Like their entire face changes when they realize, oh shit, girl with superpowers and the guns that we had to bully her basically don't work. Because it kind of reveals to us what we've known this whole time. Y'all not really here to like go after people with superpowers who think are going to threaten us, because the real people who could threaten us, y'all are not running up on them because you know you don't stand a chance. So it just really revealed like that whole thing. And at the end, Miss Bitch is literally by herself. So it's like, you know, it was very clear. Well, for one, I'm happy that they showed the extent of what Kamala is capable of, while we may just see her, using her things to get from one place to the side and just, extending her arms. Like she's able to do more. And I think probably even more than that, depending on where we go with this in the Marvels. But like we got to see a much larger extent. So I was happy for that.
Arezou, what do you think?
So I deliberately chose not to read the comics before watching the show.
Okay.
Just because my friend Swara, who has been on the show, was saying that it looks like it's going to be very different. I'm like, okay, I don't want to set an expectation going in. But I did know that embiggening was one of her powers. So when she said it, I'm like, oh, I guess it's closer to the comics than people had maybe thought. But I am excited to see that explored a bit more. Because I don't need everything spoon-fed to me, but I would like to know when and where she figured out she can do that.
There was I did think about this. There was a little glossing over of like suddenly she's very good at using her powers.
Yeah, it was like like the things like the hopping on the glowing discs. I'm like, okay, we've seen her do that. Right. So like maybe she's just practicing on her own time, but this is a completely new skill. Right. And I'm not questioning her ability. I'm not here saying it's unrealistic because I didn't get a training montage. I'm just like, where did that come from? How did you know you could do that?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sort of with Arezou on this, but I'm someone who has read the comics and I'm familiar with her abilities and her catchphrase and what she calls her powers. So, but even to me, it felt sort of out of nowhere. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm Leonardo DiCaprio in the yellow sweater pointing at the screen, being like, I recognize that. But I mean, I didn't really care either way. Like, if it felt like Marvel in a way trying to have its cake and eat it too, by changing the powers in a way that helps tell an entirely different story, which I appreciate. But then at the end being like, oh, but she also has her original powers for whatever reason. But I think everything else about that scene was also working, so it didn't end up like derailing anything for me as it may have in a worse show.
Yes. No,
I agree.
I think that's also a really good point to make, is that like the show was like the like writing and everything was like they were selling it. So yeah, if it were like a crappier written show, it might have been like, what the fuck? But like, you're fine because the show like, and it also was just like in passing, right? It's just like she quickly says it, and then like if you don't know what that is, you see that she's getting bigger. So like you're like, okay, cool. I also thought it was I mean, I'm so charmed by her in general, but I loved her using her embiggen powers with the giant pink crystals all around her and giving a peace sign. I thought that was just like so cute.
I love that the first thing she does after she becomes big and like she's standing in front of these guys, they're like, oh my god, it's Nightlight. She's like, no, not that name. Yeah. Like this is her priority in the moment, is they're using the wrong name.
She doesn't like that name. It's lame. Yeah, no, I like that. And again, yeah, I'm willing to be like, sure, she could throw a truck now. Fine. That's fine. I'm cool with that. And like, I just was happy to see her confidently using her powers. I like that. And I'm a hard sell. I think I said this in our first episode. I'm a hard sell on like a origin. So like you, Arezou, I don't need a full training montage, but like, because that, for me, that gets a little old. Like, it's like, how many times do we have to see a training montage is how I feel. But I like that we got, in this finale, our hero who is way more confident in what she can do. And I liked being able, like, just the way she acted differently. Like you said, Ashley, when she's using her powers, the look on her face, it just, you would feel her like she was a lot more secure and like, I'm going to help. I have to help. Right. And like, she wasn't really like stopping to be like, oh, what should I do? Or like unsure of herself. So then we get Cameron basically like unleashes his powers after they've like knocked him and Kamala over. And then Kamala does a thing where she protects, right? She puts up his energy powers are all over and she goes in that little like enclosure with him.
Yeah.
And Ashley, did you not feel, and I can't tell if I was like, oh, I was thinking X-Men so much because Twitter made me think the X-Men show up.
Let's get into it. Okay, because all right, so I was thinking that, but I was like, I didn't want to.
Okay, good.
And because, with, especially when we were talking about the big bad here, right? Because one minute it was the clandestines, and then next minute we are here dealing with damage control. But I think with people, for the X-Men especially, right? As much as they go up against your average, comic book villain, so much of the foil, so much of the antagonizing is from them being politicized. Like there's like literally political figures running on basis of we're going to get rid of these freaks, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of they're never going to accept us, they're never going to, they're never going to just like this is the way that I'm born. And so this conversation between Cameron and Kamala was really reminiscent of, he's, like they're never going to accept me. They're never going to, allow us to be, because he comes outside. And I mean, it's not even just like there were guns pointed at him. There were fucking tanks. So it's like, it was very, very reminiscent of what the X-Men have to deal with, because even when you're trying to be the good guy, there are people who feel like, no, even the bad shit happening to us wouldn't happen if people like you didn't exist. They wouldn't be attacking us if it wasn't for you. And so that conversation was very reminiscent of that. And it was these two sides, especially this one side that's like, fuck it, if they're gonna hate us, then I'm gonna beat their ass. Hello, Magneto. And then, this other side that's very, no, they're going to do that. But all we can do is, all we could be, the only person, the only thing you can control is how you react to it, which is very Professor X-like. So yeah, it's very reminiscent of that.
Okay. So Arezou, I know you said you didn't read the Ms. Marvel comics. Are you like versed in the comics?
No,
that's totally
Please
okay.
Don't kick me out.
No,
I'm not totally a comic reader.
No, are you? One of my other co-hosts, Adam Sass, who like loves all the Marvel stuff, has never read the comics, and he's always like, "Yeah, I don't know about the comics, but I can talk about the shows and the movies." Because I couldn't tell if like because Twitter had spoiled it for me, I kept thinking X-Men, but it did feel X-Men, right, Ashley? Like.
I honestly think the whole like the synopsis around being accepted is very X-Men. Like we really haven't had conversations around this. Like you can maybe argue that like the Accords is about it in some level where it's, but even that was more so, look, every time y'all come here, you ruin, $20 million worth of damages. So like that wasn't really about, hey, we hate the person with the super serum. It was just like, look, you are fucking up our home. Something has to give. But this is the real first conversation around, and I'm really interested to see how the MCU handles this, because like, right now, these kinds of superheroes are being treated as celebrities, where, you have your people who are like, he ain't that big of a deal. But then you also have your people who completely idolize them. Or at the very least, you have somebody in the middle who's like, look, I don't trust them cops to handle shit. So if Thor could come down here and do something, that would be great. But it's going to be interesting to see. And I do think on some level, it does even come down to a bit of discrimination, because like, it's really easy to like the pretty guy with the shield and, the hunk who can control thunder. And then shit changes when it's like people are coming out with toe-like powers.
Yeah.
And people are coming out and, they're covered in hair like Beast.
Right.
And it's like all of a sudden, oh wait, no, 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 no. I was okay with the other guys, but now,
Right.
the worst part is going to be, of course, when they find out Captain America is black. That's when they're going to really lose their shit. But like, that's this is like, now we're getting into, but like, just to go into a conversation of X-Men, like their story has always been reminiscent of discrimination, and being even more specific, anti-Semitism. So I think I am extremely nervous of how MCU is going to handle this, because the one time they were supposed to handle racism, they didn't do it. But I won't bring it up again because I brought it up every episode. But
Ashley, listen, you have every right to bring that up because it wasn't great.
I'm going to, because if I don't, they might do it again. So we need to let them know it was unacceptable. We need to let them know, please. Someone, I need anybody to send a letter, send it, because if they're going to do the X-Men and you don't handle this conversation around race, I'm getting Aurora out of there myself. I'm getting Storm out of there myself. You will not do this to her. But yeah.
Siddhant, what did you think? Did you get like X-Men vibes from that convo?
I guess so. I wasn't really thinking about the X-Men in that moment, just because
That's fair.
it felt, as much about them having powers as it did about them being Muslim American and South Asian American. But of course, like you were all just saying, like these dimensions have been around in the X-Men comics for a very long time, and you can't decouple them. You can't decouple the fantasy politics from the real world politics. Even if a lot of the comics and movies do end up, taking a very neutral, inoffensive stance, like the subtext is still going to be there because of how these comics began.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
I can totally see how, you would immediately think of the X-Men, and also the fact that like her power, like Kamala's powers are so reminiscent of the character Hisako or Armor.
Yeah.
So who is one of the X-Men to begin with?
Yeah. Ashley, did we bring? Because I saw in interviews that they said that they did actually like use that as like a kind of like point of reference to like influence how they did Kamala's powers. Ashley, didn't we bring her armor up earlier in the conversation? I feel like maybe we did, but maybe we didn't. I don't know. My brain is mush.
What, like early in the podcast or this?
Yeah, in the podcast.
I think we may have. I'm completely. My brain has completely farted here. I don't know.
That's fine. But so I did write down. I really liked this moment. Like made me cry because I'm an emotional child. But like when he's like, "How can I be normal?" and she's like, "There is no normal. There's just us." I was like,
"Oh yeah." And that's also the name of her first comic.
Mm-hmm. Wait, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. And I've read the fucking comics. I didn't even realize that. I love that, and I thought that was like. Kamala is such a good, I'm very charmed by her. And I also like that she's just very pure, but not in a annoying or cringe way. It's just like, she comes off very genuine. Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just loved that she is able to talk Kamran down, and he's like, okay, yeah. And he goes, and like, we don't need them, beating each other up or like a building collapsing on him and thinking he's dead or whatever. Like she's so sweet. And I thought that I was really glad that she was able to talk it through with him. And that was our resolution, is she talks it through with him and he goes, right? Like they don't need to battle it out.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that's where it was going. I thought we were going to do that thing where he kind of comes down for a moment and it looks like they've got that moment of understanding, and then something flares up in him and he gets angry and they start throwing each other through windows. Like that's what I thought was going to happen.
Me too.
That she talks him down and he stays down and he's like, "You're right." And then he goes to the port. I'm like, oh.
Right? It feels different, right? That is different.
Yeah. Refreshing.
Another thing about that eventuality that scared me was that if they decided to go that route, then it would become a scene of Miss Marvel having to protect like the cops and the SWAT people and all that, and Marvel doing the Marvel thing of like, gotta protect the powerful, maintain the status quo. So I was relieved that didn't happen.
You're right. So they do love doing that, don't they? Where it's like, oop, wait, never mind. Status quo we'll just keep going. Like, and that for me, that felt so different than anything Marvel, like the MCU particularly, has done so far, where it's like, oh, she just talked to him and it was fine. Like, and he went. And then I was I get like emotional at like stuff like that. And then like when they go, like, they're like, oh, we got to get her. And everyone stands up for her. I was like, oh, I love this. Like watching them all stand in front of her and the auntie who's like yelling at her. The only thing I will say, I was like, the cops wouldn't have stood with them. The cops would have been on damage control's side. That was the only part
for
where
sure.
I'm like emotional. And then I saw the cops and I was like, oh, give me a break. Like,
I did think it was funny that everybody other than the cops were standing firm when damage control was trying to push through, but damage control like pushed the cops and they're like, okay. And they just like moved to the side. I'm like, such strength of conviction over here.
You're like, that part tracks a little bit. They wouldn't
just
be standing
moved.
there. Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
Yeah. And then like, it just was such a nice way to bring all the characters together. It's like, oh, these are all the like we saw like every character we had seen throughout the series, right? Like, well, that lived in Jersey City. And Ashley's favorite character gets fired from her job, thankfully.
As she should.
I was like, that's actually when I was like, maybe she is a Skrull and that's why they're getting mad. Like, damage control is getting mad at her for what she's doing, right? Like,
that's why I'm like, she got some other vendetta going on here. She has another vendetta. Something is up. And I will say though, she's playing a great job of that. Yeah. I see her. I don't think this will be the last we see of her, especially considering that the whole point of like Secret Wars is that there's people played by Skrulls who are in positions of power. Yeah. So it might make sense that they have started to move in on trying to get their hands on younger, more impressionable, could be controlled people who have powers, because like, you can't roll up on anyone on Captain America or in Iron Man's level with that. But, as young people are being positioned to have to, be next up, they're trying to get in the way of that a bit. Because any reasonable person would have been dipped. It's like, oh, my job is on the line. This ain't that deep if no one else is going to have my back. And instead, Miss Mamas is out here completely lying to the team, bringing more people, sending the troops for, 2 kids. So I just, outside of me insulting her every 10 seconds, I just wanted to be very clear. I just do think that this is part of a bigger like plot here.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was as simple as, she just really hates Muslims.
That's fair too.
But that's very, very fair. That's very.
But I also think something that happens in the process of having, her go one way and having the other agent go another way is you do end up with this sort of very Marvel-esque bad apple story of like, no, it's not the EODC that's the problem. It's just a couple of them.
It's just this one person. No, fuck them.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was about it. That was about it.
So, that reminds me of, this is going to be a little bit of a derailment, but did any of you read Tom Taylor's run on X-Men Red?
No,
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
It was one of my favorite, like, recent X-Men runs. I think it was only like 3 volumes and then they just like integrated it into the other X-Men stuff. But it's like Jean Grey comes back and she has her own team. And it was like hands down one of my favorite X-Men stories I've read in forever. And I'm not too current on the comics. I'll read the trades as they come out. But the thing that did bother me is they did that, where it's like Jean keeps seeing all this hate in the world. And then it's like, there's a reason. It's like, oh, these brains were infected by this villain. And I'm like, no, that's not why. Like, and again, I love the run, but that part bothered me because it's like, no, people can just be hate. Like, there doesn't have to be like, oh, someone evil was controlling them. Like, no, they're just like racist, sexist, homophobic, like, you know what I mean? Like, and like, yeah, that is a thing that Marvel does love doing, where it's like, oh no, it's just that, like, it's not the whole system isn't wrong. Like, even with S.H.I.E.L.D., when it collapsed, it was because Hydra infiltrated, not because of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was, these villains had infiltrated it. Yeah, they do that.
I think that was kind of I'm sorry. That was kind of my thinking too, as far as she goes.
I really thought you were coughing to like add emphasis to what you were saying.
No, I have a cold, so I'm just clearing my throat. I'm sorry. That had been my thinking too, as far as Agent Deaver goes, is that the stuff she does feels outlandish and wrong, but it doesn't feel so outlandish that it feels unrealistic. Like, not to get too deep or personal, but as somebody who grew up in the Middle East in the early 2000s, the idea of American, very strongly armed forces showing up, hurting everybody and going, this is for your own good, is not something that feels super unrealistic.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to me, I'm like, yeah, she missed her chance to inflict this kind of pain on other people. So she's doing it at home.
Yeah.
And that's why it was so satisfying to watch her lose her job at the end. Yes, I know it's a whole not all
right, but
damage controls, but
not all damage controls.
And okay, I admit I'm super biased because I am kind of in love with Ariane Moayed, so he does no wrong in my eyes ever. But this is my bias speaking, and I'm aware of that. But it was very, very satisfying to watch this lady who messed up her job purely because she is racist to get smacked down for it.
Yeah.
And this is not a point really about the show, but because I keep forgetting Arian's character's name, I keep referring to him as Agent Stewie because of his character.
Agent Cleary.
Yeah. Well, he's Agent Stewie to me.
Wait, what's that a reference to?
Oh, his character's name is Stewie on Succession.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. I don't watch Succession, so.
It's so good.
Everyone tells me, I know. Listen, I have a nerdy podcast where it's like all superhero stuff. I'm a hard sell on like a straight up show. I'm like, oh, no one's fighting or having like blowing each other through a wall. Like, no energies flying from.
I mean,
watch it through the lens of Department
flying.
of Damage Control has decided to send a guy into a very straightforward business. Just watch it through that lens.
Fair. So then we get, which I also loved, the montage of everyone like on TikTok or Insta, like doing their like lives discussing what happened. I loved that because again, like we said earlier, that would happen, right? That feels realistic that like everyone's like recounting what happened and like being a little dramatic or like having fun with it. Or like the one boy from Mosque when he's like, Anakia said in front of everyone, I am her boyfriend. Like, I thought that was like really like a charming way to like wrap up everything. And this is going to be a weird reference, but I know no one watched the show, but I did. The Amazon I Know What You Did Last Summer show that they had. That's how that show wraps up weirdly. It's like the killer goes live on TikTok to like recount what happened. And like, I know even saying it, I'm like, that sounds fucking stupid, but I like loved it because I was like, yeah, that would happen. Like, and they had a bunch of like the characters that lived on like TikTok, like recounting what happened. And that felt like, I don't know, a like fun way to make it modern without it being like stopping the plot completely. Is like a wrap up on people doing stuff on social media.
And I love that it's not just the kids, but it's also Ruby Auntie who is trying to figure out Miss Marvel's identity. But this is a small detail, but something I also really liked is that while the show is presented in a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio widescreen, the TikToks, like the phone screens, kind of overtake the entire vertical frame. Like they go up and down over the black bars as well.
Yeah, you're right. I Marvel does that, and I kind of like when they play with the ratio, because like, I mean, WandaVision, they did it a lot, but I do like when they play with the ratios. So then we get all of that, and then we have like the wrap up of like all the TikToks and everything. And then we get her and her dad, which I thought was like very sweet. Him coming out to sit on the roof with her. Siddhant, what do you think of that scene?
I loved it for a lot of reasons. One is because, I'm a sucker for like father-daughter stuff.
Yeah.
Two, I like that it sort of changes the lineage of her superhero name while also giving a little more clarity to like, her name as a character. Because when the comics were first written, it was something that mildly confused me because now I don't want to say that Kamala is not a South Asian name. It's definitely not a typical South Asian name. It's not one that I've heard necessarily. And I always thought it was pronounced Kamala, like Kamala Harris, but that also confused me because that's a Hindu name. But then eventually G. Willow Wilson, who created the character, said that it was a feminized version of Kamal, which is an Arabic name. And so I like that in an earlier episode, they addressed that on the show by saying, oh, Muniba was a rebel, so she didn't give her a typical Pakistani name. And then I like that they sort of bring that back around to say that, yes, even though this name is Arabic in origin, it does also have a meaning in Urdu, like a meaning rooted in Urdu, which I don't believe is touched on in the comics ever, which is Kamal, which can mean a marvel. And that's how she gets her name. Because the name Miss Marvel has never been a name in the MCU like it has been in the comics before. So I thought that was a nice way to bring things full circle.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that makes sense too with like when her necklace is like dented and the mom uses that. Like,
Yeah.
Carol, like, I mean, my manager at work that we talk about all Marvel stuff with, Chris, hi Chris, if you're listening, was even saying how like, they couldn't, I mean, what you just said, like, Carol Danvers wasn't walking around in a black bikini with a fucking lightning bolt on it for a bunch of years before she got her modern costume. So like they had to make it a little different. And like people become such sticklers for the comics, right? And like, I don't know, I'm like totally fine with these changes they've made. Like, but yeah, I liked it, right? I thought that worked.
Yeah, my thinking on it is if you really like the story in the comics, there's an interesting solution for that. You could read the comics.
Also, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I also thought it was cute when he's like a little scared to come on the roof with her, but he's not like mad at her for being on the roof. He's just like a little scared to go out. I thought that was like charming.
I like that he has no idea who Carol Danvers is. It's a very also, dad thing.
Yeah, even though like she is a superhero who helped, but yeah, that is such a like my dad doesn't know any celebrity. Like he knows the celebrities from like movies he watched in like the 70s and 80s, and that's it. Arezou, what'd you think of that scene?
I loved it for the reasons Siddhant said, but also I like that and the costume both sort of came from her parents, because the strength of this show has always been the family side of it, the community side of it. That has been the highlight throughout. So the fact that both her aesthetic origin and her superhero name, I guess in the comics, both come directly from Carol Danvers. In this, they come from her family.
Yeah.
And like,
it's nice.
She's still, it's very nice. And she still makes the connection to Captain Marvel. She's like, oh my God, I have the same name as Carol Danvers. Yeah. And she makes it a total fangirl moment, but that wasn't the intent behind her name when her parents gave it to her. So I don't know. I thought it was very sweet, and it was very in keeping with the sort of the heart and soul of the show.
Yeah. And that reminds me, I meant to bring this up. It was in my notes when her and Nakia have their makeup moment in the hallway. That's like very quick. That felt genuine to best friends too, where it's like, I am mad at you, but okay, fine. Like we'll make up real quickly because we got things to do. I like that she's like, I like the stitching. Like I like that she points that out and is like, is that from Pakistan? Like she knows. I thought that was like a fun like little detail. But yeah, I liked them tying the origin to the family because like you said, it really has been the strongest part of the series. Like Ashley, we even talked a little bit how we were worried we were losing the plot with the family when she's like with the Red Dagger folks and like all that. We were worried that they might lose that, but then we didn't. And I was glad that we didn't, because it has been the like heart and soul of the show is just her family.
And it's so sweet that her mother makes her a superhero salwar kameez, which is, a traditional Pakistani wear. And even though, that's always been the case in the comics, just something about seeing it in live action was really cool.
Yeah. So then we get that scene, and then she like goes off, and then it was cute. The dad like amazed at her powers, and he's like, magic, absolute magic. I thought that was it was cute seeing the dad like almost being the fan of like, oh, that's cool.
That's also a line he says earlier in the show when Bruno sets up like his Alexa device.
Oh, right. You're right. So then we get 1 week later, right? Bruno's leaving for Caltech. I love that he stole Cameron's car. I mean, his place was blown up. He deserves a new car, right? And Ashley, what does Bruno say about her powers?
He says, well, first off is that her brother, of course, decided, was like, well, if my sister got powers, then I should because
that would be me.
They've been linking it to her being clandestine. So they were like, and it made sense. Like he was like, that means I should be able to do something. But Bruno takes a look at her genes and realizes, no, your genes not only are different from us typical folks, but they're different from your parents, your family as well. And he says it's like you have, a mutation. And then we get
I was just about to do that.
we get the music of My People in the background, and Kamala, of course, dismisses it. It'll be another label. Because of course, we're not going to get too much into that. They're just going to let us geek out over it for the rest of our lives. But yeah, we finally get the M word.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, so I'll tell you this. Originally, even though I geeked out more from the music, like when I said that's the music of my people, I really mean like,
yeah.
I know if you follow me on Twitter, social media, anything, I talk about the Avengers a lot because they're the media right now.
Right.
But I want you to understand that when we get the X-Men that we deserve, and I do have a special place in my heart for the Foxverse, but when we get them, it's not going to be me jumping ship. It's going to be me. I've been sitting here waiting for the ship to start sailing. So, I just want that to be clear. I've always been the X-Men's number one groupie. I will follow Storm to the end of the earth. Since, she could technically destroy the earth, so I'm going to go with her. But I will say that when she first said that, originally, I wasn't really going with it. She's going to be a mutant yet, because the word mutation is very broad.
Right.
And, we hear mutation and we're going to think X-Men, as we should. And of course, they gave us the nod with the X-Men 97 music. But taking that away for just a second and just thinking about Bruno here, he is just your above average high school student.
Right.
He's not thinking about this in anything in terms of anything specific here other than your DNA is not like the rest of ours. Mutant just means change and means different. So that encompasses a lot of different things, especially in this universe. Technically, the DNA of a Inhuman would be a mutation. The DNA of a human mutate, like Spider-Man, would be a mutation. So I just say that to say that word encompasses a lot. But the only thing that then had me oh shit, they really are putting her in with the X-Men, is that one of the original creators, most Marvel creators, revealed they wanted her to be a mutant, but they had to go a different route with it. So now I'm like, oh shit, did Kevin say, fuck it, if that's what they originally wanted, that's what we're going to do? So now it has me a little, I'm side-eyeing things, but I still stand by before we go too deep, I don't know, people are just completely calling her a mutant. I'm still on standby with it. All I feel like is that we're about to start taking a look into genetics, and that will bring us to this X gene that we've been ready for. I don't know if maybe a certain Dr. Hank McCoy would be a really great character to randomly decide to have put on this, and maybe not along the way because his PhD is in genetics. But to be fair, it's like every two characters in a comic book has a PhD because that's so easy to get.
I was gonna say, yeah.
But his background was always in genetics. So I just feel like, especially given the fact that this whole scene has gone down, I wouldn't be surprised if someone in a position of power is how about instead of us chasing after them and making ourselves look bad, we start to look into why certain people are popping up with powers and we still have your typical humans, and what is it that can be happening. But or it is very possible that the Bengal, see, what gets me off a bit, I'm sorry, I'm nerding out a bit here because this is what I've been waiting for the whole show.
I love it.
Is that when it comes down to the X-Men, it's about the X gene specifically. And mostly it comes through puberty. It can come about in other ways as well. But it's what's throwing me off is the Bengal, because I'm is the Bengal allowing her to tap into her X gene? If she does that mean that she was going to have powers regardless, but this Bengal allowed her to access it earlier? Or is it that she's relying on the Bengal? Because if she's relying on the Bengal, then that means she might be something else. And it's still possible that it's tapping into her genes and it's the Inhuman gene. Maybe there's a Terrigen, this Terrigen mist in this Bengal, and that's why she's able to access her power. So she would be Inhuman. It's still different stuff to me personally that this could be, because there's a few people kind of freaking out, they're changing up the thing, and I'm
yeah.
Since when the fuck did y'all go up so hard for the Inhumans? Where were y'all when the comics were out? But
Right.
where the hell were y'all now? But I personally, I'm not gonna lose my shit either way. I think I'd be a little ticked off, only in a sense of, why did we go through all of this if she secretly was gonna have powers anyways? But
yeah.
I just, until I specifically hear X gene, the mutation thing encompasses a lot, especially in the Marvel universe. So I don't know if people should be necessarily calling her a mutant yet, but I've seen some stuff on Reddit where that is, and even she was on Reddit herself, and that's what she's going along with. So it might just be that is exactly what it is. I do just stand by the fact that mutation encompasses a lot, but regardless, if that's what we're getting into, obviously that means that my people are around the corner, and I cannot wait to join them.
Arezou, what do you think of it?
So everybody freaking out about the musical cue.
Mm.
I watched it on a plane. If any of y'all have been on a plane,
Right.
you know, with the air circulating. I didn't hear it. So everybody's freaking out on Twitter. And I'm like, what is everybody freaking out about? It was just like a drum beat, right? Like in the background. So I rewatched it and then had an appropriate freak out, because for all that I don't read comics, I did grow up watching the 90s X-Men series. So I was like, oh my God, it's happening. But like, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how they're going to incorporate it. I'd rather it wasn't the Foxverse mutants, because as much as I grew up with that, the idea of those two streams crossing stresses me out. So
yes,
just on a continuity level. So I would like them to find a different way to do that. But because I don't have that root in comics and I haven't read them, I can't even begin to imagine how they're going to do that.
Yeah. Siddhant, what did you think?
I was with Kamala on this one. I just sort of shrugged at it. Not to be a party poop or anything. I know people are excited for various reasons. For me, I've slowly been kind of, making my way off the Marvel train, and like not to go into too much of a tangent, but for me, like Thor: Love and Thunder was when I decided, all right, this is no longer for me. I'm jumping off here, and I've sort of decided that I don't really care that much about the shared universe stuff anymore. About references, about what might happen. I'm at a stage where I'm taking each project as it comes, and which is why I was so pleasantly surprised with Miss Marvel, because I liked it for all the reasons I don't normally like Marvel shows. And it, even though it has all these various references and connections here and there, those aren't central to the show, so it never overwhelms the story of the characters at any point. So if you give me another Miss Marvel, if you give me something where the thing is good because it's good, you can have as many references, as many setups for a movie 10 years from now as you want. But yeah, the mutant thing, it was more like, oh, okay, I'm glad they're not doing Inhumans. But like this means like nothing to me at this stage, because it's not setting up anything concrete. Like, because the way Marvel works is they sort of project this thing of like, oh, we have a master plan, everything is in place. No, they improvise with every other project. They don't have all the pieces in place. So for a lot of the reason they do this is to test people's reactions online. And hey, the reaction to this was pretty positive, so they'll probably go in a particular direction.
So to actually a little bit with what you said, I was like, oh, they said it, but I think because Twitter spoiled it for me so much, and I'm not joking, I really thought, I mean, I know this is a terrible movie, but if y'all remember like Wolverine Origins, that scene when like they're all escaping and it's like the only scene in the movie I even remotely liked.
No.
When Professor Xavier is like there and he's like, come to get them. That's what I was expecting to happen, the way Twitter was hyping this up for me.
With his pixelated face.
Yeah. It was like weird de-aged face. I was really expecting that. So the way it was done, I kind of felt like you, Siddhant, where I was like, oh, well, like, and also you, Ashley, that could mean anything. Like, they could just be being cute. They could just be like, well, we said the word, that's why I played the theme, because we are going to get there. But then, like you mentioned, was it Reddit? You said she did an interview where she was like, she did say like, oh, I'm excited. And so I'm like, okay, maybe they weren't just doing it as a throwaway, but it could have been, because I do think Marvel, they have like a plan, but they have like a kind of plan. I don't think they're as bad as like the Lost Writers Room, where they kept saying, we know everything that's happening, when they clearly had no idea what next season was even going to bring. But I do think that they kind of like test the waters, right? My only worry with this is, well, how long are we going to wait to get to the X-Men? Because I would still want Kamala to be a kid, not to be like 35 by the time we meet the X-Men that she could possibly be a part of. Because like she is like a kid, and I wouldn't want her being older than like Storm and Cyclops, you know? That's literally my only thing. Or like older than whoever they cast as Professor Xavier by the time they get there, you know?
I have two things, right?
Okay.
One is San Diego Comic-Con's next week, and we know they're rebooting X-Men 97, which is where the theme song comes from. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure like that's going to probably be tying into anything, but still in terms of the whole, they're hyping us up for shit, maybe, sort of like, and I don't think it's a big coincidence here that like we would hear that and then the show it's from is about to be,
Right.
maybe we're going to get our first teaser of it in about a week's time. So that's one. And then two, remember there's a certain X-Men who takes Captain Marvel's powers, Rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so Miss Marvel's going to be in the Marvels, and the third in Captain Marvel's trilogy is a while away, but not, is Kamala going to be older than Storm and Professor X away. So like I say that to say that them bringing in possibly X-Men and then introducing that with a Miss Marvel related story, when her next story is going to be with Captain Marvel. I think like if anything, this kind of does make me feel confident that we'll have X-Men by like Captain Marvel 3, and that I think we'll be seeing Rogue properly get the powers that she's supposed to get, which did not happen with the Fox universe. I know. I didn't
forever mad about that.
No, I didn't mean to, but like, we have to talk about it. But yeah, I say that to say though that we are getting into some stuff where the X-Men have been linked in Avenger-esque characters. So like with that not being so far away, I think I don't think they're going to be. I tell you this, what year is it again? Right, 2022. If come 2020, I'm giving them till 2027. That we don't have the proper X-Men, Professor X mansion, and not only that, but Brotherhood of Mutants. We can all go up to Kevin Feige's house together, and people bang on the door. Like, remember the sound? Remember when you played at the end of Miss Marvel? Okay.
It's so funny how many of us like X-Men really like that cartoon really was a big deal.
It completely got me into
same.
Everything, absolutely everything. My mom, she went to get me a Barbie doll, and they sold out all the black ones, and so the only thing that was left was Storm. So my mom picked it up, and me being who I am as a person, I became obsessed with it and had questions that she couldn't answer. So she was like, "You're going to sit here, you're going to watch this cartoon until you know everything about her." And little did that woman know that this is all her fault. And she paid for it. She paid for it.
And it's funny, the 1 year, like I think like 4 years ago for the summer, I took a break. Whenever it was the 20th anniversary, maybe not the 20th anniversary, whatever anniversary of the first X-Men movie coming out for the podcast, before Ashley was a co-host, which I would have loved if you had been a co-host for this, we did like Summer of X-Men. So we covered some of the animated series and most of the Fox movies, not the last one, because what? But like we covered them all, and like I was worried that no one would listen, but like we got a lot of viewers and like listeners for that. Cause I feel like it's so formative for most of us who like even remotely like nerdy things.
And I think, I think another reason that show probably did well is because people have been so focused on Avengers within the past few years, that any content that we can get about that, like that's one of the reasons why I talk about it a lot in my day-to-day life. My friends who don't like Marvel will tell you because they have to deal with it. But you don't see me tweet about it as much because it's like, even as much as I love Halle Berry, I don't feel completely comfortable like posting a non-dark skin story. Like we don't have as much content to go off of. So it's like you give us 2.5 seconds of a beat and we make X-Men one of the biggest trending things on Twitter for half the day. Like they got us in a chokehold. I think that's a pretty big indication. I think if they were going to drag their feet on X-Men, seeing the reaction probably has Marvel headquarters like, we got to speed this shit up.
That's true. So, and then we get another end credits scene. Arezou, what happens in the end credits scene?
So Kamala goes to her room, kind of probably come back from some action thing because she's wearing a costume. Her mom's like, do your homework. She's like, fine. Realizes her bracelet is glowing. So she stands up and pokes it and gets yanked into her closet by forces unknown. And half a beat goes by, and it's not Kamala that stands up, it's Captain Marvel.
One, I want to say that Brie Larson looked fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
I was like, ooh. I actually really liked that outfit. Like it was slightly different than her actual Captain Marvel outfit, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yes, and she needs to
Yeah.
keep it.
Yeah, she looked good, and I liked her hair. I thought her hair looked super cute. And we're like, I feel like that shouldn't have surprised me, but it did surprise me. Like I was like, oh hey, like I love Carol Danvers so much, and I was just like, oh, that makes me happy. Like now I can't wait for them to meet. Like I had forgotten that was what we were leading to after this. Which like rude that it's still a full year away. um, but yeah, Siddhant, what did you think of that end scene?
I feel so bad because every time you pass the mic to me, I just say, "Oh, this didn't excite me. I didn't." Yeah, because I'm not a big fan of the version of Carol Danvers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay.
Didn't really love her movie. Don't really like what they've done with her character. Not because it's different from the comics, even though I do really love her in the comics. But I didn't really feel one way or another. I'm just glad that this is not something that took up like the climactic scenes of the actual show. Like I can
Yeah.
deal with it being like a post credit teaser.
Yeah.
You know,
That makes
I, I'm
sense.
I was always worried that the show would end with her showing up and be like, I'm gonna call you Miss Marvel or something like that.
Right.
So, hey, if it's if the story's done, it's wrapped up, and they want to, give us a tease of some fun scenario that might happen in the future, sure, by all means. So I didn't dislike it. It just didn't like excite me.
Listen, I feel like that's more than fair because I do feel that way. Like I like these type of things better when it's like, oh, the story is done. This is like a fun thing that you don't need for the story you just watched. It's like a fun little preview for what's to come. Arezou, what did you think when you saw Brie Larson?
It had not occurred to me until Siddhant just said it that she might very well have popped up during the climax and solved the problem and then said, "You will be my apprentice, Miss Marvel." Like that had
Yeah.
not occurred to me
She
until
kind
just
of
now that,
sorry to
that we
interrupt. She kind of
dodged a
does that.
bullet.
She kind of does that during Endgame.
I mean, basically, like that was, yeah. So that the fact that that didn't happen is a huge relief. And again, the fact that this is purely post credit, and you can take or leave the post credit scene, and
Yeah.
the story stands just fine on its own.
Yeah,
But then, it kind of made me feel like the way back in like phase one, the way the post credits used to be. It was like our story is done.
yeah.
Here's a hint at the next one. It wasn't instrumental to this story that
Yes.
that scene be included. And I think that's super important. That's what sets it apart from other ones.
Yes, I really do think like because I think of like my parents, they're 75 and 76. They're not watching post-credit scenes, right? Like, so I always think of something like that where it's like, okay, but they don't need them all. And like you said, yeah, phase one was it was just like a fun like hint at what's next, but it wasn't pivotal to the story. I mean, nothing will ever beat Samuel L. Jackson coming in at the end of Iron Man to be like, I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. Like, I feel like I nearly shit my pants when I watched that in the theater. But yeah, I like this. Ashley, what did you think?
Yeah, same as everyone else was basically kind of saying. Like reading the comics, there is a portion that's very, very heavily focused on her being a Captain Marvel fan, and I'm happy that they still gave her the fascination of being a fangirl, but at the same time didn't allow it to just like everything she's doing is revolved around Captain Marvel, and
Right.
eventually just have her come in and be the one who saves the day. And Miss Marvel's just so happy to chase after her. I'm happy that she got to be a hero in her own right, stand in her own story. That it was a really fun post-credit scene that ties us into what Miss Marvel's story is supposed to be next. I also think it ties into even because I need the clandestine story to at least be a little bit more meaningful. But like with the whole second bracelet thing, I feel like maybe part of the reason they switched is because that other bracelet was tampered with wherever it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I'm just trying to figure out like what would cause them to switch places because Carol's at Kamala's place, and that means Kamala is wherever in space, or I don't know. Maybe she was on Earth, but Kamala is wherever Carol was, and could that be because that's what the two bracelets can do? I don't know, but in terms of seeing, Brie, she looks great. I do feel the same way. Like I wasn't a huge fan of the first Captain Marvel movie, but I'm still a fan of the character. I really was not happy with some of the direction that they took with it, but I'm excited for the sequel because for one, they have a different director and it gives a little bit more intersectional. Like if you're gonna do the
Right.
whole Shiro thing, like let's remember that there's more. I'm gonna just say it. It's not just white women.
Yeah.
But so this one makes me feel a lot. It feels different, even though it is technically a sequel. It feels more. I don't know. It gives me like Civil War vibes, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
like someone's name is at the top, but it's gonna give
Get a
different
good
interpretation.
ensemble.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm really I think it was a really good way of showing that that Miss Marvel's going to return. That this story may link into Captain Marvel on some level. But like because it was a post credit scene, for people out there who didn't get the time to watch the whole thing, I don't think they're going to be completely lost when this sequel
Yeah.
comes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was cute, and I would love them to get back to doing post credit scene like this, where like it's possible not to watch it and it's fine. Um, all right. Well, I guess we're at the end here. What was your favorite scene from the finale, Arzu?
On a very superficial level, anytime Agent Cleary was on screen made me very happy. But on a serious note, I think it's a toss up between the costume and the scene with her dad on the roof.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, just because those were my favorite parts of the series as a whole. So the fact that it played such a big role in her identity
Cool.
made me very happy. So it would be a tie between those two.
Siddhant?
For me, I think it has to be the entire high school sequence, which everyone has been calling like the Home Alone bit. Because, like I said, it was fun and it had me at the edge of my seat and it was exciting and it felt like, everything one of these things should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Ashley?
Sorry, guys, my dog was in the bathroom singing, and I had to make sure he was okay. Like, what's going on here? Yeah. So, all right, just to be like real here, I'm going to say her in beginning.
Okay.
Maybe I just waited on it for too long, and I was just really excited. I don't know. There was something about that. Like I don't know. There was something about like there was something very. What am I looking for? Like like it was very final acty, like
Yeah, yeah.
when like Iron Man 3 when he brings out a million Iron Man suits and it's like like it was
Yeah.
very I don't just do the little stuff that you guys haven't seen. Not that it's little, but it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it also was like her first comic book or one of the first comic books is her getting tall in the camera with her phone and blowing a bubble, and it's like that is still her, even with all the changes that the show has made. So, but that being said, am I going to hold on to the 3 seconds of that X-Men note forever? Yes. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. And I just feel like it would be bad if I was like, yeah, that was the best part was be hearing a fucking X-Men background. But yeah, no, I will be thinking about it.
Listen,
thinking about it.
I think that was probably my favorite part of Multiverse of Madness. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Siddhant. I loved them home aloneing Damage Control in the high school. That was like, and I love that it was all these like, I mean, the brother's not a kid, but like all these kids that have like a well laid out plan to fucking fight these agents, and I love that they were good at it. I mean, the kids still got captured, but like Cameron got away. Like they succeeded in what they were trying to do. So yeah, I really like that. All right, and now we'll give a grade for this episode and then a series as a whole. Ashley or Siddhant, you go first.
Sure. This episode, a solid B, and overall also, pretty much the same. Because I enjoyed it a lot. I do think I tend to, grade Marvel stuff on a bit of a curve, but yeah, B.
Fair. Arzu.
I'm a very generous teacher. Any of my former students will say that. A for the episode, I think A minus for the series as a whole.
All right, cool. Ashley?
For the episode, I'd have to probably give it a solid A. I feel comfortable with it. Maybe I'm being I'm being biased. Yeah, the 3 seconds, I don't go.
That's fine. That's fine.
I feel bad. But in terms of the entire series, I'm gonna give it an A minus, and really, I'm just like that. I would do more a solid A, but I don't know. I'm a little off putting with the whole clan. I almost feel sometimes like I wish they had it done, they would have done like a regular sort of high school student figuring out her powers, and these like bastards damage control keep popping up, and then in the final episode, there's the big showdown or something like that, because it feels like it almost felt like a completely different show than what we got in the last episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know, like the first two was very much in the voice leading up to where we got in the last episode, but then we got this whole clandestine storyline that went somewhere else. As much as I love the Aisha thing, the Aisha episode, which I think was required for us to get some background on.
Yeah,
you know, it just, that whole, you know, Najima thing, like now it's, I don't know, but like I don't mind them as villains. To just do that with them, and then it's like, I don't know if that worked completely with the story, but so that would be where the minus comes in. But other than that, great.
Yeah. I would give this finale an A+ and the series overall an A. B, kind of the same reason you said, Ashley. I missed the Scott Pilgrim-y animation by the we didn't get it anymore, and I loved that. Mm-hmm. Like, is it the second episode or the third episode when she has that very, very charming like "Be My Baby" dance scene around her house? Second, yeah. Like I loved that, and I kind of would have. I wished, even though I loved this finale, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that kind of stuff. Seeing her like just like do regular teen stuff, not having to find out like the powers come from this dimension and like this is a group from a different dimension and then they're all gonna die, so it won't matter. That could have been like a season 2 plot line. But yeah, I still love the series overall. Ashley, thank you so much for co-hosting all of these with me. I appreciate you donating your time to this gay little podcast.
Well, you know, I have to do what I can for the community. I take so much from you guys. I have to, I have to do my part.
And Arezou, thank you for joining us for the second time in a row. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me back.
And Siddhant, thank you for coming on for the finale. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate all of you listening. If you like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to us on Patreon, where you can get access to all our bonus episodes. We're covering Harley Quinn Season 2 and What If. And if you want to follow us on social, we are at SlayerFestX98. If you want to follow me, I am at ENXCarlos. Siddhant, where can everyone find you and your things?
You can find me on Twitter at Siddhant Adlakha.
And Arezou, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Arezou, and all of my writing, everything is in my bio.
And Ashley, where can everyone find you?
Ashley K. Smalls, Twitter and TikTok mostly is what I use. And then also joined the Marvel Fans Assemble group to, talk shit, unless it's too much shit, in which case you will get kicked out. But other than that, no, you know what? I need to start making that disclaimer. You've been in there. You see what goes on.
I was going to say, did you kick out that guy talking about Black Panther today?
I sure did. I sure did. Get fucking comfortable. What's wrong with you? So yeah, you can join and you can talk shit unless it's about anything led by a person of color. You talk about the white men and that's it.
I saw that tweet, Ashley, and I was like, ooh, Ashley's gonna be pissed when she sees that.
I'm fucking tired of it. Why would you come into a space owned by a Black woman and do that? What's wrong with you? Anyway.
What was this?
They made Twitter communities, and I started one for Marvel fans, and it's just the funniest shit because I made it as a place where we can talk shit without not even talk shit, but be happy without some random person being like, Marvel fans are weird. And literally the first thing they do when they get there is talk about the shit they don't like. And I'm like, why the fuck would you come here with that? Why are you in the face of Black Panther fans to say you thought that the movie was mid?
Yeah.
What do you want us to do with this information?
And then getting mad, oh, how dare anyone say all that? All right, yeah, people are going to disagree with you. That's a stupid opinion.
Anywho. But
anyway,
that's why I feel bad saying anything remotely, negative because I'm on basically a Marvel podcast.
Oh, no, not at all. That's totally fine.
Look, I am 100% for criticism. Everything you gave was valid and you even backed it up. That's mature conversation. Saying movie is mid, period, nothing else.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
And also just wanting to get attention and cause shit.
Call your mother. Don't come here.
Well, on that note, I had a lot of fun covering Ms. Marvel, and thank you all for listening and thank you all for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye.